If my people, Bible reading part 102, 2 Samuel. We're just starting it, so we'll be in chapter 1, verse 1. After the death of Saul, David returned from defeating the Amalekites and stayed in Ziklag for 2 days. On the third day, a man arrived from Saul's camp with his clothes torn and with dust on his head, and when he came to David, he fell to the ground to pay him honor. "Where have you come from?" David asked him. He answered, "I have escaped from the Israelite camp." "What happened?" David asked. "Tell me," he said. "The men fled from the battle. Many of them fell and died, and Saul and his son Jonathan are dead." Uh, didn't we read earlier on that Yahweh said, "I will get rid of the Amalekites"? Two things here. Yahweh comes down, wipes people out through pestilence, through famines, and which he's going to do again. It's also future tense about pestilence and famines. If you read as we complete the Bible, we'll understand that what's coming, pestilence and famine, what takes out more people's lives than anything else. Does Yahweh end up cleaning house for you without you having to do anything than hearing and obeying his word and everything he says and tells you to do? How do you know what to do? Because you pray every day, you talk to him, and you get your answers by reading the word. So that's how we know what to do every day. And if you do that every day and lay aside a special day every week, Sabbath, that's the whole day. That's not for 45 minutes at your local church. The entire day is devoted to you and your family to rest. Okay. The other thing is that if Yahweh doesn't come down and bring pestilence and famine like he did in the plagues and so forth in Exodus, there's a good example about how things are going to be in the last days. Look at the first Exodus. Here we go again. The Amalekites were defeated through David. That means that David was in the Word with the Father. So, mission accomplished. Verse 17, David took up lament concerning Saul and his son Jonathan. A lament, knowing David, it would be in the form of a song or playing on his lyre. A dirge, a slow, methodical song with words telling of sadness. And he ordered that the men of Judah be taught this lament of the bow. Once again, songs. "Behold, it is written in the book of Jasher," or Jasher. Comment. This book of Jasher, is it in your Bibles? No. But the book of Jasher was important in the days of David. If you have ever read it, you may agree that it's just important today. Why? Because just because Jasher was not canonized by people who quite simply hated Jews, it doesn't mean it should be ignored today. Once again, hated Jews, about 300 or 400 AD. And these books did continue to exist, but they weren't put into the biblical form of the 66 books and the 70 some odd books, the high 70s, like 78, 79 books found in the original King James that was printed by the order, not written by King James, but ordered by King James to be written. So in these last days, knowledge will increase, will it not? We consider the book of Jasher. What do I consider it? My opinion, humbled opinion. It's a history book. I have a number of books over here on the side. You can't see them all. They're canon books and also apocryphic books. Apocryphic books, books that are not considered canonized. And I consider them history books. The book of Josephus, history books. Can I pull some incredible information out of there that later on, as you read the scripture, especially in the New Covenant, you can see, whoa, I see where they're talking about it. If I hadn't read those extras, I still would have understood it, but not fully as much as I did. For instance, reading the book of Jasher. So it's a history book. book. Just like all history books, I study on the history of World War I, World War II, all the wars and stuff like that. History of geography, history of uh, uh, civil and governments and so forth. All of them good books. The libraries are full of them. I know people don't go to them anymore. They get everything on their cell phone or they just don't read it at all. But if you actually read these books, I think the trustworthiness is exceedingly above whatever it is you get on the internet. Just like I've told you, don't believe a word I've said. Test everything I say. Test it. Read the word, rightfully divide it, follow Royal Torah, and we shall see at the end. I put a lot of work in this, and I hope I've blessed a remnant of the people out there. The great majority of the people of the world that will read this and look at this, if they ever do, and there's massive numbers on the YouTube, they won't pay attention to it. They won't follow the instructions like I've asked. Read a book from beginning to end, and they won't agree with it. Wolves will never agree with it. They'll argue with you and come up with all their lame excuses. And then they won't even agree with you on the most important things. Is Yeshua the only begotten Son of the Father? They won't even agree on that. You don't want to spend time with those people. But with sheeples, people who just kind of get a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and they're not hot into the Word, they're kind of cold into the Word. Well, they're not lukewarm, they're just cold. Cold water tastes good at times, but you can only do so much with cold water. But love them anyway, okay? All right, so that we mentioned that, we go on through the book of 2 Samuel, and chapter 7 is interesting. After the king had settled in his palace and Yahweh had given him rest from all his enemies around him, he said to Nathan the prophet, "Here I am, living in a place of cedar, while the ark of Elohim remains in a tent." Has for a long time, David. Nathan replied to the king, "Whatever you have," keyword, whatever you have in mind. It doesn't say whatever Yahweh says. Nathan didn't say that. Nathan is a good man. Go ahead and do it, for Yahweh is with you. So he's dependent on David to make a decision in which David is 100% right with Yahweh at all times. That's what Nathan's saying. He's kind of skirting it a little bit. That night the word of Yahweh came to Nathan, saying, "Go and tell my servant David." Notice that Yahweh went to Nathan. "This is what Yahweh says. Are you the one to build me a house to live in and dwell in?" That's a question mark. It's written in the sign of a question. Now, there's no question mark in Hebrew, but you can understand the way it's said. "I have not dwelt in a house from the day I brought the Israelites up out of Egypt to this day. I have been moving from place to place with a tent as my dwelling. Wherever I have moved with all the Israelites, did I ever say to any of their rulers whom I commanded to shepherd my people Israel, why have you not built me a house of cedar?" Two question marks there. "Now then, go tell my servant David, this is what Yahweh of hosts says. I took you from the pasture and following the flock to be a ruler over my people Israel. I have been with you wherever you have gone. I have cut off all your enemies before you, and now I will make your name great like the names of the greatest men of the earth." This happened in David's lifetime. That's a comment. And what I'm saying this as we continue reading, this is not over. When the millennium comes, his name will be made great, as we will read later on. In fact, I think it's coming up in another huge hint in the second part of Samuel about in the millennium, who is on the ground, who is in the oblation area, who has the authority as a priest to be in the oblation area, where only Yahweh and Yeshua dwell. The rest of the people of the world and the sheep who are hearing and obeying under Iron Scepter rule go to Jerusalem. But who goes north, keyword north of Jerusalem in the oblation area, which is measured out, would be, in the center of it would be just about a little bit north and about 5 degrees to the west, which is true north of Jerusalem, would be the current town of Bethel, house of El. where the healing waters will flow out of, heading south down a mountain hill. There's no mountain there right now that can flow to Jerusalem. There's going to be. There's going to be. So there's the huge hint that you need to catch on here. Verse 14, I will be his father, he will be my son. If he takes iniquity upon himself, then I will chasten him with a rod of men and with floggings of the sons of men. There's the Iron Scepter rule. There's the promise to come. It's going to happen. Comment, this may sound strange relating to Yeshua. However, when Yeshua took up the sins of the world so that his bride would be blameless before his Father, he suffered much, and Yah allowed it to happen. The visual image for us in this day is that David was the only man after Yahweh's own heart, but he was not qualified to build the temple. The natural seed of David, Solomon, is the natural understanding of the one to build the house for Yahweh, if Yahweh permits it. So once again, does Yahweh saying to do it? No. Is he going to permit it? Yes. No and yes. No, he's not going to let David do it. Yes, he's going to allow his son. Is that what he wants at the end? Well, as we see and read history, always in the Bible, the answer is no. that temple was destroyed and burned. And the next one built after that was an inferior one. And then the one built on that was called King Herod's temple. And gee whiz, that was very inferior, full of extremely sinful, not Yahweh people, Pharisees, Sadducees, and the priest. The whole temple was full of nonsense. When Yeshua was walking the earth and he had to walk into his Father's house and see the nonsense and the sin that was going on in his Father's house. It's never going to happen in the heavenly kingdom to come. But it is right now, and it has happened right now. As we said before, and we'll just continue on, especially when we get in the book of Ezekiel, pay attention to the instructions and the timing of Ezekiel and the directions and the architectural and the list of everything on how it's done. And there's no way on earth that the Ezekiel temple would fit in Jerusalem, much less on the Dome of the Rock. No way. Okay. As much as thousands of people written Bibles, put their names on it without really doing much study, they just want to make $1 and sell all this stuff and produce it real cheap without having to do any study, have put out there. So there's, 30,000 denominations out there, and there are thousands and thousands of Bibles that tell you the exact opposite of what I just told you. I don't know. What can I tell you? Last chapter, verse 25. David built an altar to Yahweh there and sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. Then, key word is burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. Then Yahweh answered prayer in behalf of the land, and the plague on Israel was stopped. Comment. It ends there. To keep you in time and line history, the goings-on in the Bible study at this point, we bring you key verses to note. The decline and fall of the northern kingdom will take place after Solomon's death and through his sons. The original temple is still standing. The decline and fall, the original, Assyria was a tool used by all this to take them out. And the temple was still standing in Jerusalem. That's the tribe of Judah. So the history lesson in the books of Samuel and Kings will trace the rise and fall of the peoples who simply did not hear and obey the Father. All the promises will stand for Yahweh. Today we have a state of Israel, not a country, approved by the United Nations, but there's no sovereign United States or United Israel, the country. The scattered northern tribes of Israel are not connected, not yet, not united, not yet, not in the land of Israel, not yet. In fact, those currently in the power of the state of Israel will not permit the scattered tribes of Israel to come and stay in the land and live permanently. And do not begin to count the return of Israel starting in May of 1948 is the when Israel moved back in the land. Israel did not move back in the land. Only one tribe, and about the great majority of that tribe does not believe in Yeshua. And most importantly, many are Ashkenazis. There are certain kind of Ashkenazis that are called atheists, and they don't believe in God either. There you go.